So we've got a good old AR620T aquarium. Haven't seen one of these for a very long time. I need to give it a service. Now the first thing that I would recommend with this particular tank is I would get a heater in it, and that would allow me to get catfish, because there's quite a lot of algae buildup, and bristlenose catfish, they do a wonderful job to keep the glass nice and clean, and they're very beautiful fish. Now keeping the light off will help minimize the algae as well, but in this case these lights have gone out, and these lights are very hard to get now because this is a very old system. So we're going to have to consider what to do in order to light the aquarium properly, if that's a priority. Now fish tanks are 50% water quality and 50% food quality. This food's okay, it's okay, but I would really rather use something like Spectrum's probiotics, because it's a cold extruded food, it's not pressure cooked or processed, and it also has probiotic bacteria in the food, which means when the fish poo, the bacteria in the poo eats the poo, which will keep the tank nice and clean. So this air stone pretty much needs replacing. The filter is very, very dirty, but what I would recommend for the future is consider putting polyfilter here, because polyfilter, instead of trapping waste and clogging up, the polyfilter will clean particles out of the water so it doesn't clog up. And the other thing is it will adsorb and absorb anything impure out of the water. So it will really help to reduce your maintenance and keep the tank nice and clean. And the water's a little bit yellow, which means that it definitely needs replacing a little bit more often than it has been. Also, it definitely needs some new decorations, because these decorations over time, they do get ratty and do need replacing. So if it was up to me, I'd chuck them in the bin, chuck some nice new decorations, and just know that they are a little bit disposable. One of the best things you can ever buy. These are called flippers, and they really do a wonderful job at keeping your tank clean. You literally just do what I'm doing now, do a once over, and you just see all the algae go, because this blade at the front does a beautiful job. It makes my life much easier. So what I'm going to do now is flush out this filter using water from the aquarium, because it's really important that I don't ever clean this filter using tap water, because tap water contains chlorine, and the chlorine can kill off all the good bacteria that keeps the fish alive that grows on this media. So that's something I'm going to bear in mind. Now as far as the water quality is concerned, the water's alkaline, so that means it's not acidic. I'm happy with that. The KH is about 3, so I'm relatively happy with that. The GH is about 12, so I'm relatively happy with that. There's a tiny bit of ammonia in the water, and that's because there's not a heap of oxygen in this tank, and it's quite tall, and the filter was very dirty, so I'm not really worried about that. Nitrite's pretty well okay, and there is a little bit of nitrate, which just means that we probably are due for a water change. So all in all, I'm actually not unhappy with the quality of the water. It definitely can get better, but I'm not terribly unhappy with it. And then as far as food is concerned, I'm not unhappy with the food either. The food is, it's okay. The food's okay. I'm not a big fan of these heavily processed pressure cooked flake stuff. So all in all, the fish health is actually quite good, and there's really no reason for them not to be good, because the water quality is okay and the food is quite okay. It can be improved, but it's definitely not bad. Now it's important you take your pumps apart and give them a little bit of a clean. Now this one, this impeller is going to need replacing, so I'm not going to be able to clean that impeller without doing a bit of an operation on it. So next trip we might need to bring a separate pump, or we may just have to replace that impeller, because that impeller is no longer in one piece, which happens over time. So you do replace the impellers over time, but getting this one out will be a bit of a mission, but it probably is possible. And then we can replace the impeller, and then the pump's probably okay. But that's something we're gonna have to look at for next time. So this is an old 620T aquarium. So to clean this filter properly, we are gonna have to replace that impeller, or at least consider it. So that's something that is gonna fail at some point, but it seems okay. Now with these curved aquariums, you have to be very careful if you move it, because it's very important that this is flat and they settle these tanks. So what you want to be careful is, if you ever move this tank to another location, you have to make sure it's exactly flat the same, because that's one sheet of glass that wraps around there. If there's a little bit of a high point, it puts a lot of pressure on this bend, and this cracks very easily. So with these tanks, just be careful if you're ever moving them. And then also with these filters, you need to be careful that this don't ever clog up, because if they clog up too dirty, sometimes they do run water down the back, and that was definitely one of their not so popular features. That's why I prefer to use polyfilter over normal filter wool, because the polyfilter will trap the particles so the water can still go through it and it won't really clog up. So if it was up to me, I'd have polyfilter running in here, not just normal filter wool, because it won't clog. Now the idea with the water change is to take as much dirty water out of the tank as you can by stirring up or gravel siphoning the bottom. Now in summer we can do larger water changes, but in winter we don't want to do too big of water changes because we don't want to change the temperature too quickly, or we can shock the fish. Now the media has been cleaned using water from the fish tank, and soon I'll put some filter media in there, and I'll keep removing some water, and it'll be right. Now it's very common that when I leave an aquarium it looks worse than when I got there because I stir it all up. Now I'd really recommend putting some nice new decorations, and some nice high fake plants will make this tank look really nice. And it's good to change your decorations every now and then, because that's the fish's world, and when you change your decorations, especially put something hollow they can swim through, then it's like giving them a whole new world to play around in. So swapping out ornaments definitely keeps it nice and interesting for the fish, and when you've got something new to look at, it definitely keeps it interesting for you as well. Okay, so once again the impeller in there is due to be replaced. Now when this water clears up, I'd like a nice big fake plant here. The filter's actually pumping quite well now, but it's really important we watch that this filter doesn't get really dirty, because if it gets really dirty it can clog up and actually go down the back, which is not as fun as you'd think. So if we just give that a wash every now and then in water that you drain out of the aquarium, then we just keep an eye on the media in this side, and then we've got this as mechanical media. But if it was up to me, I'd be using polyfilter. Polyfilter is a bit more expensive, but it's really worth it. Now the other thing that we really want to see is this agitation. These bubbles and this agitation is actually very good for the fish, because when the water goes up into the filter sucks all the oxygen out. So we want to make sure that it's aerating on the way back in. So this water will very quickly clear up. It's very common for the water to be cloudy after I leave. The bubbles are bubbling away okay. The filter is pumping away okay. The filter's all clean. We've done a maximum water change. So now that we've disturbed everything, the water's quite cloudy, so it's quite common for that to get dirty. So if that was given a clean using water removed from the aquarium, that would be really great, just so it doesn't end up clogging up. Now these fish are not looking fat and they're not looking skinny, so I'm happy with that. But it's really important that you know what a fat fish or a skinny fish is, because you need to regulate how much you're feeding by whether your fish are actually fat or skinny.